Welcome to the Mind Body Podcast. I'm your host, Maria Angelova, and I'm here to challenge everything you have been told about aging and wellness. This podcast is for those who refuse to accept that growing old means growing unhealthy. Each week, I will bring you dynamic conversations with inspirational guests, sharing practical advice, insights, and motivation to live your life rebelliously as you age with grace and vitality. This is your time to embrace self-care, transformation, and an infectious spirit that says no to the conventional and yes to a vibrant, powerful life. Let's dive in and redefine what it means to live well. Hi, Rebels, and welcome to the Mind Body Podcast, your rebellious podcast with me, your host, Maria, where it is all about a strong body, calm mind, healing, and fully living. And our very special guest today is Sabrina Victoria, who is the community builder and a serial entrepreneur. And I do have to say that a woman who I very, very much admire and am inspired by. So welcome, Sabrina. I'm so glad that you're here.
Yes, girl. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It is totally my treat. I've been so excited about doing this recording because, I meet a lot of fantastic people, Sabrina, and then there are those who really, you hear their story and you just go, wow, like really, wow. And I don't know why I can even get teary-eyed about it, but yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of things. So before I dive into getting teary-eyed, give us 3 words that tell us who Sabrina is, maybe a little bit of a backstory behind each word, and let's dive right in because there's
Okay. 3 words. I mean, one of the things that which we were just talking about, really pride myself on is just my ability to be able to build community, my ability to be able to bring people together for the greater good. In this case, I help women build businesses. Second word would be, I do whatever it takes. These aren't just words, these are phrases. Do whatever it takes. It kind of sums up my story just in general. I do until. So there is no giving up in my story. And then 3, I'm very patient.
good.
Yeah, a lot of times people don't really see that because they see this girl who's grinding all the time and she's working all the time. But I'm actually very patient. And to build a successful business, to build a successful friendship, to build a successful relationship, it takes patience.
You know what? I do have to agree with that. And I'll tell you, that's personally something that has been a work in progress for me, because if you ask my family to describe it, probably one of the first words that will pop up is impatient. And I'm like, no, guys, I have been getting so much more patient. And, now I find myself, going through my journey and learning to be patient and embrace the process, right? Because we all want to get to the destination, right? And then also I have to teach people, right? When they get frustrated with their body, with where they are in life, with the results that they're getting, it's like, you know what? We're all on this journey, on this process that every day it's a next step, it's growth, and it's not an overnight miracle. So I have definitely come to appreciate the power of patience.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Very, very cool.
Yeah. So Sabrina, you, like we just were talking before the recording, you are doing amazing things in this world. You are empowering women. You are teaching women how to build successful businesses. Very importantly, not just through the business side, but through the self-improvement, personal development side. And what I really love about you is your story. You have amazing, powerful, knee-jerking TED Talk. And I would love for you to share and talk to us about that, because I think it is so easy for all of us to fall victims to our circumstances and to where we are in life. And it's easy for people to see the success and the brightness and, the things that you're doing great into the world. But few people really get to hear our journeys and what it takes to be where you are today. So will you indulge us and share your courageous story of transformation?
Yeah, 100%. So I'll loosely share it, and then we can kind of like delve in. There's so much. I mean, it's multifaceted. But the moral is that I continue to evolve, continue to escape, continue to build, continue to not give up, you know? So I was actually raised as a Jehovah's Witness. I got pregnant at the age of 20 and I wasn't married. And because I wasn't married and I was a Jehovah's Witness, I was what was called disfellowshipped, which means everyone I had ever known, my whole family and every friend I had ever known dropped me.
Oh,
yeah, within 72 hours of announcing my pregnancy, announcing that I was going to keep my baby. And I like to emphasize that because I could have aborted my baby secretly. And my whole life would have been different. And I am pro-choice. No offense to anybody, but I am. And I made a choice to keep my baby despite all of the repercussions that I knew were going to happen. And I like to talk about that because it's not always, the decisions that are given to us are not always good, easy decisions. But you have to make a decision that's good for you, you know, and it's not always the most pleasant. It's not always the easiest, right? So I led this stereotypical single mom broke life of literally no money, like digging in my couch cushions for 25 cents to put gas in my car, eviction notices on my apartment door every other month, my car getting repoed out of the parking lot, having to decide to, walk to the grocery store because I couldn't afford gas and food. Broke. Crying in the bathroom every night, wanting to commit suicide, dealing with postpartum. I did that for about a year and a half. I have no idea how I did it. Literally paycheck to paycheck, barely surviving. And then I met a man. And that man I thought was given to me by God because I had been praying for help financially and he had money. So I ignored all of the red flags, and girl, there was hundreds of red flags. And I just ignored them all. I fell hook, line, and sinker for all the tricks. He convinced me to move in with him as a gift. You know, you can't afford rent anyways. Come live with me. Then he convinced me to leave my job because my job sucked anyways. He's like, let's build an empire together, right? Gifts. He was barely paying me anything. He was paying me $250 a week, working 14 to 16-hour days, 7 days a week. And I still cannot afford anything. I'm still broke. I can't afford my car. I can't afford daycare. I can't afford my phone. So instead of him saying, let me pay you more, he just took more and more over. So he took my phone over. He got me my own computer. He took my car over. So within a very short amount of time, I look around and I own nothing. I have nothing. I have no money. Everything's in his name as gifts, you know? And as he gained more control, slowly, the abuse got worse. I didn't know it was abuse, you know. But one day I'm on the floor in the bathroom, 8 years in, having a total mental breakdown, which I did probably every other day, but this one was different. So I'm on the floor in the dark, in the bathroom, in the fetal position, and I'm crying and screaming like death was coming out of me, in so much distress about my life, about an argument, about something. And I pulled my phone out. I always say Google saved my life. I pulled my phone out and I Googled on the floor. I could barely see because of my tears. And I Googled, why is my boyfriend bullying me? It was the first time where I was like, I need help. I cannot do this by myself. I need assistance. And Google is the one that told me that I was in a narcissistic relationship. I had high empathetic vibes. I was very codependent. I didn't know anything about money. And two things happened that day. Number one, I found out there was a shit ton wrong with my partner. Number two, I found out there was a shit ton wrong with me.
They kind of go hand in hand together.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a huge realization. And luckily, I did what a lot of people don't do. So a lot of people, when they find this out, they go down this rabbit hole of like, how do I fix my spouse?
Yes.
And they spend so much time trying to fix somebody that is literally unfixable to a degree. Instead, luckily, not to say I didn't dabble in that, right? We did do some research, but luckily I dove headfirst into how to fix myself. And I went into all the personal development. I took a ton of courses, a ton of programs. I opened up a secret bank account. I started online businesses. I started trickling in money slowly to start to save. And over the course of just a couple of years, I saved $50,000. And I literally ran away one day. I took my son, our clothes, and my bicycle. That's it. And I started all over again from scratch with a mattress on the floor. And I've been building businesses ever since.
Was speechless. And there's so many things that you brought up. And just last evening, we had our call with my tribe on the topic was control. We made that important point that the only person who we have control over is ourselves. And sometimes that is not an easy realization, right? Because it is so much easier to try to blame others or to, say that to become victim of our circumstances and say, well, my life is this because my husband is like this, or my boyfriend is like, or my parents are like this, or whatever. And I say that with all due respect, because I do realize that, there is a difference in variability of the situations, right? But I love the part that it was scary. It wasn't just like you just dove into building an empire. You went through that journey of starting with yourself. And I can, my story is very different, but I can relate when you say you were lonely, because when I switched from corporate to entrepreneurship, I found myself very lonely. I found myself, a lot of people couldn't relate to what I was doing. They're like, why would you ever want to do that? That doesn't make sense. It was criticism. It was mockery. And it didn't feel good. I was already feeling lost. Financially, things were rough. I was already having the doubts and the fears and all. I didn't need anybody to fit into that. I needed somebody to say, you can do this.
Yeah.
And it was lonely. And Sabrina, you work with a lot of entrepreneurs. You probably hear that a lot. I hear that from a lot of entrepreneurs who say, I feel lonely. I feel unsupported, which is why I also love what you're doing, because you're about community and I'm all about tribe. And it makes such a big difference of who you have around and the people who support you, the people who can see the potential in your passion and yes, you can do it despite what your circumstances are.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And community is so important because, when you really look back at my story, a lot of it was happening because of the lack of community. If you don't have anyone to turn to, if you don't have anyone to bounce ideas off of, if you don't have anybody to collab with, to ask questions to, people know things. You know things that I don't know. I know things that you don't know. And the only way that we can both start to take steps forward or up in our life is if we start to share those knowings. When we start to share, we both start to take a step up slowly. And my story does not include community, which is why I stayed in that hole for so long, that darkness.
Yeah. What would you say if you're talking to an entrepreneur? And you know what, for that matter, not really an entrepreneur, anybody who is in a situation where they feel stuck, right? I mean, you're a mom with a small kid, you don't have money. That happens a lot, right? And you're in a relationship just because you feel like you cannot make it on your own. Or maybe you feel like you need to take a step back before you can make it on your own. What do you say? What's your piece of advice for somebody who has personally walked the walk and is now on the other side?
Yeah. Just to kind of put a number behind that, by the way, when I did my TED Talk, I dove into all of the research around narcissism and toxic behavior and invisible abuse. And it's 47% of marriages stay together because of finances.
Mm-hmm.
They can't leave because they're being financially abused. They're making no money. Like they're staying broke and they're stuck because they have no money. And a lot of it's because of the kids. They can't go back to work. They can't pay for daycare and they're totally stuck. It's like a means of abuse. It's a means to keep someone trapped as a prisoner. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's good. it doesn't surprise me that it happens a lot. It does surprise me that it is almost at 50%, because I hear it a lot. I hear it from women who say, I can't afford a divorce attorney,
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to pay for an apartment or for a house or for food or for a car or for anything like that, right? And they admit it to themselves, like, I'm miserable. I'm not happy. And it doesn't actually, I should say, it doesn't only happen on the women's side, right? It can happen on the side too.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, well, we're going to stay married till the kids are whatever, graduate college or high school, whatever the milestone is.
Yeah.
And, the one thing I tell people is we are not guaranteed time. I mean, who told you have 5 more years?
Yeah.
My story, my dad passed at 48. I am 47 years old now. I mean, that puts perspective, into things. Like,
Wow.
I think about that, like, wow, he was only
So young.
right? But like, we go through life thinking, well, I have all this time. And it's like, we have today. And how can we make today the best day that we can? I mean, again, my story, it wasn't one of like, I just flew through the roof following my purpose. It was uncomfortable, but my goodness, it was so worthwhile.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but now that you're on the other side, when you look back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's unbelievable. I'm so grateful. I still sit to this day and I thank myself for like my inner child, in essence, for like having the courage to do that, because it was so scary. You're stepping into the unknown. You have no idea what's going to happen or if you're going to fail. Super scary. But when you're in a situation like that, and it's the same with business, you have to bet on yourself. You have to. If you're not betting on yourself, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
You have to go all in on your ability to be able to do no matter what. And that's what I really told myself is like, I don't care how hard it is. I don't care how long it takes. This is gonna work. Like, I am going to do whatever it takes to, number one, get out of this situation, and number two, be successful, outside of this relationship. And that's where my passion comes from. That's where my drive comes from. That's where my light, comes from.
Yeah. And I love, like, in the beginning, when you were talking about making a choice to keep the baby and making the announcement, you said that you stayed true to yourself, which is what I call alignment, right? And it is so much easier to just go along with what we should do so that we can fit into the box and not rock the boat and so forth.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of time to stay true to yourself. We have to step outside of the comfort zone, which is where the unknown is. And you guys, I love that piece of advice, bet on yourself, because I mean, yeah, going back to who can you control? You can only control one variable, and that is you, right? You're in charge of the choices that you make. You mentioned the word failure. I say there is no failure, there is only lessons. And if things don't work out the way we envision them, there is a lesson for us in there. And I don't know if you agree with that. We all have stories that fit into our purpose. And the stories are not so beautiful, always the background stories, right?
Yeah.
But there is a reason.
Exactly. And that's what I talk about regarding my story. It's like, I don't ever tell my story so that the people listening are like, oh, her religion, oh, her parents, oh, her ex. That's not what the story is for. It's not for them. The story is to inspire other people who are in dark places to know that there is hope. And it doesn't even have to be my story. It doesn't even have to be similar to my story.
Yeah.
It just has to be a story where you feel stuck, where you feel like there's no way out, where you feel like you're a prisoner of sorts, and to know that there is a way if you make a plan. There is a way if you do research. See, when I did that Google search, that was me finally at the end of my rope saying, I need a different option. Like, I need an answer to this because this is not working. So I'm like winging it. And obviously that I did one search, right? But then I did 1,000 other searches that have gotten me to where I am now. It's not like I just did that one search and then I ended up here. I did 1,000 other questions. on how to do things to get me to where I am right now. And that is the key, is the curiosity. How do we do it better? How do we do it different? How do we pivot? How do we refocus? How do we get out? And instead of sitting in a situation of, like, I sat in victimhood for a really long time, and I was like, there's no way. There's no way I can do it. I'm stuck forever. And because I was doing this mentality of, he sucks, this sucks, my life sucks, I just stayed in the situation. But when I really started to pivot my questioning and started to say, if I could, what it would look like, if I did, what would it look like? And when I started to be more inquisitive and more curious about, what if I could? What if it was possible? That's when my brain really started to kick into gear and started giving me other options outside of the negative, of some possibilities. And then, did all of the possibilities work? No. Some of them were total failures. But I just kept trying. And that's the same with business, right? Like, I'm sure you tried a few things in your business, a few machineries, a few workouts, a few promotions, and some of them are flops.
100%. And you know what? I am very where I am because of my flops.
Yeah.
I mean, really, and I'll tell you, Sabrina, I am also glad that you brought up the fact that you have to be consistent with those decisions outside the comfort zone, because I'm sure I've probably shared this on the podcast before, but when I was stuck, and same thing like you, I was like, okay, they say that when you follow your heart and you go after what you love, like, the money would come, right? Your life would unfold into most beautiful way. And that is not what I was experiencing my first year. It was the complete opposite. And same thing, asking questions. Where do I start? Where do I seek help? What is my first step? I found myself in a mindset coaching class. And I remember getting on the mic and asking, what do I do? And the coach was like, well, you have to take the next uncomfortable step. And I was like a little kid who was like, no, I already took one. I don't want to do this again. He goes, well, he's like, if you want to make it, you have to keep taking those uncomfortable steps. It was so much easier to blame it on, oh, my friends are not supportive, my husband is not supportive, It wasn't about me. And then when I turned that mirror and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of opportunity for self-work.
Yeah.
So that I can take my business to the next level. So such great points that you bring up. Any other piece of advice you want to share? Anything that pops to your head that you want to encourage people for, inspire people for? I love your story.
I mean, the main two things that I continuously used within that circumstance was, number one, everything is going to be okay. I reassured myself all the time. I pause, I'd breathe, and I'd say, everything's going to be okay. That was the first one. The second thing that really got me through was, I have to do whatever it takes until. The key word being until. Because a lot of people try things, right? They're like, I tried to do that. I did it for a certain amount of time. I gave it this time. And it's like, how badly do you want it? Did you try all the options? And you have to keep going until you find it, until you figure it out, until there's changes. And those were, some of the biggest things.
And I did think to mention that before when you were speaking. I think that's also the power of perspective, right? Mm-hmm. If you go after something with the perspective, oh, this is happening to me, like, this is because of the way my husband is, versus, well, you know what, there's gotta be a way out, right? The minute you give yourself an option that there is an alternative, your brain completely shifts, right? And it goes into a solution mode versus I'm stuck mode.
Exactly.
So even seeing the opportunity, because sometimes the opportunities are around us and we cannot see them just because we're stuck on whatever it is that we're stuck on. So having that mindset to just say, okay, what are my options? And then one thing I always say, preach and remind myself is, everything is happening for me. Sometimes easier than others, but I just remind myself. And instead of, again, going down the, the self-pity party, which is so easy to do, saying myself, okay, this didn't go the way I wanted it to go, but I'm sure there is a reason it went that way. So if this is happening for me, where is the opportunity? And I'll tell you, when COVID happened and I had to shut down my studio, I was sitting on the floor. It was a Friday afternoon and I made the decision to close the studio. And I was like, now what? And after I did my self-pity, I was like, okay, where is the alternative? Like, what can I do? And that's how I started my online business. But it was that shift of, I could have said, okay, that's it. My business is done.
Yeah.
So the power of perspective, the power of attitude, the power of embracing the journey and embracing it as the journey that it is.
Absolutely. Yep. Right.
Very cool. Sabrina, what is your definition of rebellious?
Of rebellious?
Yes.
Ooh. I would say going against the grain, not doing what everybody else is doing. Yeah, I'm definitely one of those people.
You know what? As I asked the question, I was going to say, I definitely have a rebel here sitting with you.
Yeah, I've been the black sheep. And, even at this point in my life, although I don't identify as that anymore, I definitely am always questioning things. I question myself. I question my business. I question the people around me. I question life. I question like my own thoughts, Why am I thinking this way? Why am I nervous about this? Why do I think this? And constantly I was putting myself in the hot seat,
I think that's so powerful because it's a constant self-reflection, self-discovery. And I personally totally agree with you. I am the same way. And I have to tell you, when I'm working even with master teachers, I give them a warning and I tell them, just so you know, I'll ask you a lot of questions and I'm not asking you because I'm questioning your knowledge. I'm asking you because I want to learn and I want to understand. But I tend to annoy people with my questions because I can literally ask you 500 questions in the span of 30 minutes just because I'm curious and I want to know and I want to explore and I want to dig deep, which, I think is another reason you and I connected, because we had such a fantastic couple of conversations when we first met.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. That does have a lot to do with it, for sure. You want to make sure that you're surrounding yourself and you are spending time with individuals who are on the same page as you,
Yeah. Love it. Sabrina, where can people find you? Like social media links, website? I definitely would love to include link to your TED Talk, which you recently did, because TEDx, again, I thought that was very powerful. But tell us, where can people find you, follow you, find more about what you do?
Yeah, so I make it really easy for everybody. My website is my exact name, sabrinavictoria.com, and that has all my social media. I do predominantly hang out on Facebook and LinkedIn, although you do find me on Instagram also, but all those links are on my website. So wherever you hang out the most, just follow. I always follow back. And always inspirational, always community building, always teaching. I'm always teaching. So,
one other word that pops as you're talking, I would say always real, which I really appreciate.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your super busy schedule to be here with us, to inspire us, to share your story, to share your wisdom. Very, very much appreciate you. Thank you. And Rebels, you know the spiel. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to ask them. Do make sure that you follow Sabrina, check her out, ask her any questions they might have. Definitely share this with anybody who you know would appreciate the information, and stay inspired and stay rebellious. We will see you next time. Talk to you later. Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you for joining us on the Mind Body Podcast, where we explore the power of living authentically and rebelliously. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow rebellious soul who would love to hear what we share as much as you do. Stay strong, stay calm, and most importantly, stay rebellious. Until next time, rebellious souls, keep living fully. Your journey is just beginning.